All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. You're here with Tom. George will be here momentarily. He was here. He's having computer difficulties. So as soon as he can get back on, he will be joining us as always. So welcome to everybody. I see a bunch of members in here. Special hello to the members. And so we're going to go through. A lot of info came out this week. A bunch of the Bitcoin miners put out their financial statements, their quarterly financial statements. We got a bunch more operational updates, and we got some mixed behavior, but I'm going to present the argument that this was good behavior by Bitcoin and the Bitcoin. I think everybody's going to agree it was great behavior by Bitcoin, but it was good behavior by the Bitcoin miners, and I think we've turned the corner, and I think the run is about to be on. So I don't like to try to pick a day, as you guys know, but I'm just going to lead with that. I think we have been through a long period of trials and tribulations with these Bitcoin miners and with Bitcoin. We were 3 or 4 months going sideways and down. We got all the way from almost 109,000 down to 74,000 and change. So it was a long, hard run. But it's over. We have had some bullish signals that I've been waiting and waiting for. We've been talking about. I'm going to show you one of them that I have never talked about, but we crossed it yesterday. In my opinion, a big signal. It turned bullish. So I like what I'm seeing. Yes, if you guys could please hit the like button. We got 24 likes. We're going for 100 likes. For our first time in 3 years, last Friday, we did not get 100 likes. So that, and I talked on the stream about the fact that, this is a part of what makes a bottom. Like all of these things all added up, put together. So the bottom is in. If you didn't buy, you missed the bottom. But that doesn't mean that you missed the run. Because if you look at these Bitcoin miner stocks, and we're going to take a look at the charts, they are still down drastically off of their 12-month highs. So they're down from where they have recently been. Never mind where they were in the last cycle. So I do think there's all kinds of runway ahead. So, maybe you didn't buy in at the exact bottom, but that's okay. And for those of you who have been buying and you've been out of powder and waiting, I think your wait is over. And I think we're going to start getting this run like now. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean that there's never going to be another red day. We'll have pullbacks. We always do. But I think we got some big. So George is back. George is with us. Hello, George. I was just telling everybody, I'm kind of calling it. The bottom's over. We bottomed out. The run is on. I know. I hear you. Trust me, I hate to say it because, as soon as they hear everybody saying it, they're going to do the opposite. But I'm going to go through so many different data points today that say, the bottom is in. And I think they can't stop. By the way, the shorts just got destroyed. We're going to look at some liquidations that went on. So, no, I did not. So, they can't hear you? Hold on, let me fix. I should be able to fix that. Yeti Nano default. Come on, man. I might have to get tech support again. I did the thing I was supposed to. It didn't help. I'm looking at it. Hold on. I know one more thing. I know one more trick.
Amen to that.
Boom! I think I just did it. Please let me know in the comments, George. Give us a
What
test.
I said was on Thursday, when I got rumors of all the news that's going on, I posted on your channel and I said, shorts? Is it time to sell? Question mark.
And the answer was a resounding yes, because
Yes.
shorts got liquidated in Bitcoin. Shorts got liquidated in most of the altcoins. It was a train wreck for the shorts. And now we're over. I mean, this was a great 2 weeks for Bitcoin. And the Bitcoin miners, you know, there were actually some that were red today. Wolf, I'm going to go through Wolf. I know why Wolf was red. I will also kick myself, but I'm not going to. So I'm going to tell on myself I didn't do what I wanted to last night. But I feel okay about it because I have a general rule. I don't trade after hours. So I try very, very hard to stick to my rules, because once you start breaking the rules, you know, investing can turn into chaos. So I watched Marathon and CleanSpark put out their financial statements, and those stocks tanked last night. And I'm like, should I do it? Should I do it? I'm like, no, that's against my rule. I will wait. And sure enough, I missed the boat. So Marathon was down like 5 or 6 or 7% last night. Marathon ended up 10% today. That's a 17-point swing I could have caught if I bought it after hours last night. If any of you bought it after hours, and CleanSpark, same thing, up 6% today. It was down 6 or 7% last night. So if anybody caught that swing, let us know in the chat. Did you pull the trigger after hours and take advantage?
I didn't even, Tom, you didn't even call me. I didn't even know anything was going on. I would have done it.
You know, it's hard because we've had so many red days. It's like, you know, but it just, you saw once the market opened this morning, and today was a very weird day. If you look from 9:29 in pre-market to 9:31, those 2 minutes, if you held Bitcoin miner stocks, the world changed dramatically. They went through the, I'm going to go to one. I'm going to go to, let's see.
If you're doing that, Tom, I am down 47% from the number I said I never wanted to get below. 47% from that number.
You're down 47% from your worst case scenario number.
Yes,
So
that was my, I remember the day because I was going to do, because this is my year. I'm getting 100% out of debt. This is my year. And I need my investments to get back to 47% just to be able to do part of that. Yeah, you're right, Sauer. Thanks, Barry. I got to change this beautiful sign.
Oh, because we did it. Now Bitcoin to 150. This doesn't show pre-market, but essentially they were flat. So, you know, every chart looks like this. These are 5-minute candles. The giant jump right at the open. So, you know, things pre-market lately has been very unreliable. The Bitcoin miners have made big moves throughout the day, and you can see there were big swings up and down and back up, and it's depending on the stock you had. You know, if you were in Marathon, like this is today, this is 5-minute charts today. I mean, look at this jump at the open, and then look at this run up in the middle. Oh, sorry, this is the open right here. Sorry. So this is the open today. I mean, look at that run. And this doesn't really show, you know, the pre-market where it was down a bunch. This was up as much as 14% today. And, you know, it did pull back. So there wasn't even an opportunity to buy a lot of these in the middle of the day. Everything pulled back, and then everything went on a run, except for TeraWulf. And I'm going to go through TeraWulf a little bit because at this point, for me, in my opinion, TeraWulf is just strictly waiting. They are a company that's waiting to get a contract. And if they don't get one, their financial statements were, out of all there's 7 companies that have put out financial statements, and I would grade theirs the lowest out of the 7 companies. So that's just their financial statement performance. you know, they did at least finally by putting out their quarterly report, they gave us an update on how many Bitcoin they've mined, what exahash they're at. So I think they're at like 12.2, and they said they were going to get to 13.1. So it looks like they're getting there, but they have no plans to get beyond there. And their revenue is very small, and their gross profit, their cash gross profit before you factor in depreciation and amortization is minimal. It was like $8 or $10 million. So this is a company that's cash gross profit. So you have to subtract from that all of your overhead, and then to get to GAAP, you got to subtract from that depreciation and amortization. I mean, they need a contract right now. That's my opinion. TeraWulf is a company that their business model right now is, hey, eventually we're going to get a big contract. I mean, hit me up if you think I'm wrong. And I know a lot of people made a lot of money on this stock. So that's the difference between sometimes, you know, operational performance, financial performance, and the stock performance. So, you know, I congratulate everybody that made a lot of money on this stock, but I think this stock is going to lag. You know, it was down on a day where Marathon was up 10%, and their earnings looked like a nightmare, but you had to dig into them a little bit. But let's just quickly go look at two different things. So it just at a super overview, you've got Marathon here with $213 million of revenue in the quarter. And about, what's this, like 150, no, this is actually operating, so 131 million in direct costs, not including overhead. So that leaves like 80 million in gross profit. If you go to TeraWulf, they had 34 million. So remember, Marathon had 213 million. They had 34 million in total revenue for the quarter and 24 million in direct costs, excluding depreciation. So, you know, that's a little bit under 10 million in gross profit. That has to account for, you know, their general administrative expenses were $46 million. So they're making 10 million in gross profit. That doesn't cover their G&A. Forget depreciation, right? This is a company that's very upside down right now. They don't save their Bitcoin. So, you know, it's not a company where at least as Bitcoin goes up, you know, they're getting massive gains on their Bitcoin. So I just feel like, I'm not going to say they're broken, but I think they made a conscious shift away from Bitcoin mining towards high performance computing. And until those high performance computing contracts come in, and there's no guarantee that they will, but, you know, if you're buying this stock, in my opinion, it's because you're assuming they're building out massive infrastructure. They've allocated 500 megawatts for high performance computing, and that ultimately they're going to get big contracts to fill that up and make money. But if you're depending on their Bitcoin, their cost per coin, of the 7 that have reported, they have the highest direct cost per coin by far out of the 7 companies that have reported so far. This is a company, for instance, I'm waiting. Bitfarms has not yet reported. They report next week. They are going to report more than double the revenue of TeraWulf, right? And they're, so just to put it in perspective of what I'm talking about, if I go look at TeraWulf, this is a TeraWulf, $1.15 billion market cap. Bitfarms, 600 million. So roughly, TeraWulf has almost double the market cap as Bitcoin. They have half the revenue, and they're going to have maybe a quarter or less the gross profit. Bitfarms, and we'll have to wait and see, but it's my prediction they will have at least 4 times the gross profit in versus just direct costs, not counting depreciation, that TeraWulf has. And they're priced at half the price. So I think there's some discrepancies out there that we can take advantage of potentially as investors. Not, not financial advice. You guys know everybody's got to, it's your pick, and you're going to make or lose money based on it. But I'm just looking at some facts here, and I see discrepancies. And by the way, Bitfarms at $1.08. We had a bunch of people on here a month ago telling me I was an idiot if I thought that Bitfarms wasn't going to have to do a reverse stock split. You remember that one, George?
Because hang on, I got somebody bitching at me. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Right, Bitfarms did get down to 67 cents, and the conversation was back on. It's not the first time we've had this. It's, they're going to zero. They're going to have to do a reverse stock split. They're never going to get back to $1. Well, not only did they not never get back to $1, if you go to the Bitfarms chart, and I probably talk about Bitfarms a little bit more than the other companies, but it's because, I mean, this chart was, I'm going to go back to the 1 day here and look at Bitfarms. I mean, if you look at what this was, and we called this. So one of the bottoms we called, this was the day I made all of my big purchases. This red candle right here on April 8th. So from that day until now, Bitfarms is up, just under 60% in 1 month. And I think you'll see, if you look right here, this was a line of support that we lost, and I think we're breaking out from it. So, I think next stop's $1.50 for Bitfarms. Now, again, there's going to be red days. It could even go back under a dollar at some point, if things take longer than I think. But I think we've had, 60% move in 1 month is a big move. The Bitcoin miners are doing well. It doesn't feel like it because they're still so underpriced, which is why I say it's actually good news if you're just getting here, or if you didn't buy when you wanted to buy. If you look at these, even looking at Bitfarms up 60%, I mean, just go back. This was November. They were at $2.76. They're at $1.08 right now. That's almost that's a 2.5x from here. Just to get back to where they were in November, which, by the way, wasn't their high of this cycle. That was $3.91, and they got to $9.61 in the previous cycle. So I don't know which one of these numbers they're going to hit, but I feel fairly confident that this is a stop along the way. They have recaptured this line of support. Just want to get rid of this thing. And
I don't think you guys are going to like my next statement.
Go.
We're going to have violent swings in Bitcoin in the next 90 days.
I mean,
when I mean violent, I mean, you're going to see it like
worse than it's been.
Yeah. I mean, I'm talking one day you're going to watch it drop 20 grand, and then bam, it's going to come right back, immediately come back right up. So just be careful. Know what you hold. You know what I mean?
I am going to go ahead. Based on what you're saying, I'm going to, so on the Tuesday members only live stream, and this opportunity, I didn't get the opportunity, but the Federal Reserve talked on Wednesday. More often than not, the market tanks. Knee-jerk reaction tanks to that. So I said, if I get the chance, if there's a tank tomorrow, I don't care how bad it is, I am buying. And of course, it's the first time in ages Jerome Powell did his speech and the market didn't tank, and then it ran. So I will say, however, I did add a brand new stock, and this might end up being a swing trade, and I'll find an article that somebody put out on this and put a price target on it. I bought Canaan, and it's up 14.89% today. I bought that yesterday. So, obviously my 1 day return is good, but we'll see how it does. But I'll just show you, you know, this got me to do a little my own due diligence. And this is where reading articles, I read this article, Bitcoin mining rig maker Canaan could have a 5x upside, says Wall Street analyst. So Benchmark started their coverage of this, and they put a $3 price target on it, and it was 50-something cents when they did this. So, you know, we recently added them to our list, maybe 3 months ago or less. So I've only just now done all my due diligence, and, you know, they've been on my, are they next? Is that the next one I'm going to add? And so after reading this article and after looking, their stock was at its all-time low, like 3 days ago. It's all-time low. And to me, that made no sense. So, you know, in between the 3 or 4 weeks that I hadn't really, you know, I had to update my due diligence, the stock had tanked to a point where it was just screaming buy. And by the way, it's up 14% today, and that doesn't change my opinion at all. I just bought my first tranche of that, and, you know, I'll probably buy more even if it doesn't go down from here, because, you know, that to me is it's still very close to its all-time. I mean, this was its all-time. I'm talking, forget the bottom of the crypto winter. This May 6th, today's the 9th, was this company's all-time low ever. It makes no sense. I mean, look at this chart. It just goes up, up, up from there. So it's gone down. It got wrecked. So it's had a big run in a short period of time. But again, if you look at this, this was December. So this was, you know, a little over 4 months ago. All right. This stock would have to run up to a 333% run just to get back to where it was 4 months ago. So I don't think that's out of the question. Right? And that, as you can see, you know, that's not its all-time. It's not like that was its all-time high. This was a $7 stock. This was an $11 stock. You know, I kind of said ignore this period. But, you know, at one point, this was a $40 stock. But even if you just talk about anywhere from $3 to $7 to $11, I mean, that the person opened up a price target of $3, and it's pretty easy to see why. The only catalysts they've had, in my opinion, since then, and then I'm going to get to Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. The only catalyst they've had in the middle is they've started focusing on doing more of their own Bitcoin mining, and they make their own machines. So, you know, it's almost free money to them. So I like this company. Again, I'm not recommending it. I just will tell you I did add, and it's obviously my smallest position. That's my first purchase. So it's much, much smaller than my other positions. But even if this goes up, I will probably keep adding to this, because I do think, you know, this just fell through the cracks and went to some bizarre place, just like Bitfarms did at 67 cents. There was no sense to that, in my opinion, and there's no sense to this, in my opinion. Now let's get to Jeff, Jeff says, buy the gosh darn supermarkets and know your money is safe and will generate yield growth. SFM, KR, WMK, VLGEA, IMKTA. So barbell with the miners, easy. So Jeff's been saying for years, and this supermarket trade that he's been talking about has been phenomenal. So that's been a great trade for years. And, you know, that's one of the hard parts. You always think, oh, man, it's been a good trade for, you know, 2 years. But I could have said a year ago, oh, it's been a good trade for a year. I missed it, but it kept being a good trade. And that's my point with these Bitcoin miners. One little day or one little week of going up is nothing. You can see how low these are. These are still drastically. We're going to go look at the exact charts. All of these are still drastically off of their 12-month low highs. Sorry. Never mind their all-time highs. So a lot of upside. I know a lot of people have given up on the Bitcoin miners and they think that they're dead and they're dead money, but I think
dead money.
I think you're going to see when I show you the charts of what they've done in May. I don't know. It doesn't look like dead money to me.
We're back to $3,500 in our 10K challenge.
Insane.
So we did a 10K challenge, probably at the worst time ever in the Bitcoin miners, ready to go. We watched it go right down to the bottom. Went down to $1,500.
Yes, and it was a one-time purchase, and it was right near. I mean, we might as well have rang the bell at the top. It was it was January. It was January 1st. So November of 21 was the all-time high, and we bought everything in the first couple of weeks of January of 2022. So it was still, very near those highs, and the Bitcoin miners were very near their highs.
But you know what's funny, Tom? I think it's going to be okay.
Oh, I do too.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's going to be the best. I mean, that's going to be, as far as there's one thing Warren Buffett says that you just have to understand is probably the most truth statement he's ever made. And that is the only equalizer you have to these hedge funds is time.
That's right. That's exactly right.
You can't, if you fundamentally believe in what you're holding, you don't sell when the price goes down. You actually buy more. If you fundamentally did your research, you didn't watch somebody on YouTube say, "Oh, go buy this stock." That's not what I'm saying. You understand what they do, and you like what they do, and you see an opportunity for them to grow.
So that what George says is the absolute most important thing, and that doesn't mean you're like, for instance, I read that article and it jogged me to go update my due diligence. Now, if you watch the channel, you'll know we just started talking about Canaan maybe 3 months ago. One of the members actually recommended, hey, they're mining their own Bitcoin a lot more now. We should take a closer look. So I did, and that's so you can see an article and it can prompt you, or you can watch a video, like even these live streams, and it can prompt you, but it should just prompt you to go do your own due diligence, because if you are borrowing somebody else's conviction, you will fail.
Yep, 100% of the time. Because you'll be panicked.
That's right.
And that's the reason why I say there's going to be a few violent swings in Bitcoin. It's because who's the largest holder of Bitcoin right now? Or one of the largest holders, I should say.
I mean, MicroStrategy.
BlackRock.
Oh, I got you. I have a whole segment on that, and I didn't even get that answer right.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. I'll let you get there.
You got me, George. No, go ahead. I mean,
they know how to steal your money. They know how to frighten people and steal people's money. And I call it steal it because, again, if you have convictions in the stock that you hold, even if you're a day trader or a swing trader, you can be caught upside down all the time.
I'm going to go to this chart.
You read what Barry just wrote?
I just read that. Tom gives the best financial advice when he says it's not financial advice. That's his secret. That's the secret signal. And then I give the secret signal a lot. I want to go to this chart because where the heck is it? Okay, so this is the ETF inflows and outflows. If you look on the right-hand column over here, you're going to see all but 2 days are black, which means all the Bitcoin ETFs put together have been positive inflow for the last 3 weeks, except for 2 separate days. But I'm going to go to the column on the left. This is BlackRock. Every single day, they are adding. On April 28th, $970 million worth of Bitcoin. On May 2nd, $674 million worth of Bitcoin. That was a Friday. On the following Monday, they followed it up with another $531 million worth of Bitcoin. They have added, I think I have an article that talks about this. Let me just get to it so I don't waste it. Well, I can't find it. It might be this one. I'll find it later. But essentially, they added like $4 billion. Where is it? It's the...
What are they up to? Do you know?
Well, their inflows are $44 billion, but their worth is a lot more than that because obviously the price has gone up
right.
a lot more. So I know they have over 500,000 Bitcoin. They have more than MicroStrategy.
I think what are we, 2 months away? Yeah, we're about 2 months away from the kickoff of the ISO 222s. That's when I think altcoins I think altcoins not kicking in until sometime in June, by the way. So even if people are all excited to see these pumps, don't be too excited yet. Because the one thing that has to happen for altcoins to kick off, do you know what that is, Tom?
What?
Bitcoin has to hit a new high.
Yeah, Bitcoin, that's exactly right.
People forget that in this whole thing. Not saying, there's not opportunities right now in some great altcoins. There's some great altcoins out there. But now I think that you're going to see, going forward, I think you're going to see some great opportunities in some altcoins. Yeah, did you see ETH? So, want to hear a crazy thing we did? The day before that move, I went heavy into ETH, and that was a great move.
Oh, you did?
Yes. And it was, so how much do I want to share? Okay, so we have a wallet that, let's just say we have a wallet. I'm just going to leave it at that, okay?
There's a wallet.
The coins. And in order to move the coins, we had to change it into ETH. And then we did move the coins from, the wallet back onto the exchange. We just changed them to ETH. Bingo. And that was the best thing we did.
The timing was just right on that. And ETH has, and there's another one. ETH still has, it just made a gigantic move and it still has so much room to make up. It's still so far behind Bitcoin's performance in this cycle that, if you believe in ETH, and you think it's going to do its thing, then this was just the beginning. And to your point, George, I don't think altcoin season's really even started. Now, maybe you didn't get to buy it at the absolute bottom, and ETH got down to stupid numbers. I mean, it was, I didn't buy it because, again, I'm just not, the difference between ETH to me and Bitcoin they're two different universes, and I have all the confidence and understanding in the world on Bitcoin, and ETH to me is an altcoin. Its market cap, even though it's the second largest, it's just a tiny fraction of what Bitcoin's market cap is. And I think XRP is going to pass Ethereum's market cap this year. And I have a bunch of, we're going to start doing XRP segments, George, because that was your call years ago. It was the right call. And there's so many things going on with XRP right now. So I have three different stories.
If you don't understand it, you would get sucked out of it, man. And here's the thing about XRP. I am actually making myself my own exchange and bank with just XRP, by the way.
Right.
120? Wow, you're crazy. You're crazy, man.
Here's why I asked that. On our Tuesday members only stream, we said, is Bitcoin going to get to 100? Right? Because that was still a valid question at that point. And it was the old 80-20 rule. 80% thought yes. Now I'm up in the ante. Are we going to take out our previous all-time high and keep running? This is a tough get, but I think there's a real shot.
Do you know what's supposed to happen on Monday, Tom?
I don't.
Oh. Let's see if anybody knows what's supposed to happen on Monday.
What's supposed to happen?
If you guys know what's supposed to happen on Monday, please write it in the chat, and let's see if I am an moron about stuff, or if how I'm just my conspiracy theories.
I know this. I watched the president say he has a game-changing positive announcement to make.
Yep.
And it could be as late as Monday. I don't know if this has anything to do with that.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, he
Yep. Barry, it's a full moon. Isn't that just crazy, Barry? It's a full moon.
Thank you, Barry.
Isn't that crazy? I didn't even think about it. It's going to go parabolic on Monday. And just so you know, I expect a God candle in Bitcoin. What I mean by a God candle is it might, there's a chance we could see a God candle this year. I would put it around 10% of a chance. Okay. But I expect the God channel, the God candle to happen next halving.
You expecting it the next halving. So
Yes,
I
not
got
this halving.
I got
the
an
next
article
halving.
we'll go to next then. But first I want to wrap up your BlackRock conversation. BlackRock Spot ETF tops the world's largest gold fund. So the largest gold ETF in inflows this year. IBIT outperformance indicates institutions' confidence in Bitcoin's long-term prospects despite the cryptocurrency's relative dollar price performance. And obviously this was written 2 days ago, and then Bitcoin went ballistic after that. IBIT has surpassed the Spider Gold Trust in year-to-date inflows. I mean, this is how much adoption is going on, and I'm telling you guys, this is nothing. We haven't seen anything yet, and it's already, you know, this BlackRock's ETF's already passing golds.
Okay, what would you call the definition of a God candle? What would be your definition?
For me,
Yes.
I mean, is it a one-day candle?
Yeah, it's a God candle. That's a God candle. It just goes parabolic in one day.
I mean, to do like what's never been done before, you know, if it went up 50% in one day, to me, that would be mind-boggling.
Yeah, and that's what I anticipate. I would say between 50 and 100%.
Yeah, that's
and I won't say
uncharted.
1 day. I'll say 36 hours.
Yeah, so in a short period, a brief period of time, whether it be a day or 3 days.
Yep. And the reason why is because of Satoshis. No one talks about it. We don't even talk about them. I had an hour-long conversation today about Satoshis. No one has any idea about Satoshis, and it's just like, wow. It's what whoever invented BTC for that's when adoption will really take place. We're still in the beginning stages of crypto, let alone Bitcoin is the most mature, but we're still in the beginning of the crypto revolution. Go ahead. I won't say. No, I just you know this. I mean, we're just so much power is being taken away because of crypto, and it's just crazy. And I'll just say it like that.
I think we're in early days. When we look back on this, we're in early days. Now, obviously, from this perspective, at $103,000, you look back at Bitcoin $5 and you go, that was early days. But guess what? You know, no, is it going to grow at the exact speed it has in the past? It's grown so drastically, but is it going to get from 100,000 to 1 million? And if it is, when? And I'm going to go, you know, George was talking about this a few minutes ago. So let me find just a second. So here you go, George. You were saying you think it's going to happen in the next halving cycle.
Yes.
Arthur Hayes says Bitcoin will hit $1 million by 2028. So that's the next halving, 2028. Yeah. He says, as U.S. China...
And I don't even know who that person is, or did I ever read his article?
The former BitMEX CEO says the U.S. Treasury, not the Federal Reserve, is driving global liquidity. So, you know, if he's right, and, you know, to some extent he is, all eyes seem to always be on the Federal Reserve. And, you know, rightfully so to some extent. they do affect global liquidity. So I don't totally agree with this guy's line of reasoning, but he is saying he predicts Bitcoin will reach $1 million by the year 2028 due to increased liquidity and geopolitical factors. So there's your Bitcoin to $1 million. That's a 10x just on the underlying asset. How much is CleanSpark going to be making if Bitcoin's worth $1 million?
I think what happened was these guys did deep studies. Who I mean by these guys, hedge funds did deep studies on crypto and understanding the crypto world. And that's the reason why you've seen these altcoins get freaking destroyed, is because they have figured out the game. I think they're running Aladdin in the crypto world. And they said, look at, if you had to look at what the biggest growth is going to be in the next, 5 to 10 years in the stock market, I think it's two things. It's AI and Bitcoin miners. Personally, I think, we're going to kick ourselves in 5 years at these current Bitcoin mining prices.
I think for the right Bitcoin miners, that is
absolutely
true. For the ones that have branched off and kind of hung their hat on AI, some of them are going to get big contracts, but some of them may not. So, I don't know what their future is. To me, none of us know. We don't have a crystal ball, but, I still think the three cleanest plays on Bitcoin are CleanSpark by far is the purest play on Bitcoin out of all the Bitcoin miners. And I'm not saying it's the best stock. I'm just saying they are on record. They do not now, nor will they ever have anything to do with high performance computing and AI. They are 100% Bitcoin. They got their HODL stack in somewhere in an 18 to 20 month period. They went from having 500 Bitcoin to 12,000 Bitcoin. And that was without buying Bitcoin. They mined all that Bitcoin. They HODLed themselves to 12,000, which is the third largest stack of any Bitcoin miner. And now they just switched last month to a hybrid scenario where it's going to be somewhere 50-50. They're going to pay for their operations, and then they're going to HODL the rest of their Bitcoin. So, you've got CleanSpark with 12,000 Bitcoin on its balance sheet, and they mine the second most Bitcoin out of anybody. You've got Riot with 19,000 Bitcoin. You've got Marathon with, I think, 48,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And then obviously you have MicroStrategy with over 500,000 Bitcoin on their balance sheet, but that's a different formula completely. And by the way, MicroStrategy has outperformed the Bitcoin miners so far year to date. I don't know that that's going to be true by the end of the year. I think some of these are about to take a run like we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for.
Do I think XRP from Pogo? Hey, George, not financial advice. XRP still a good buy at its current price. What do you think it's going to be in the future? So I think XRP still is going to be the backbone of the digital world. Remember, if you do anything with Satoshis or BTC, you know how expensive it is. It's astronomically expensive to move it around. That's why it's considered a store of value. I shouldn't tell you this, sorry guys, but what True XRP calls BTC is beta test coin. Did you hear me? Beta test coin. And there's some reasons to think that that is a true statement, that was a beta test coin. But I mean, I'm not backing away from it. I'm keeping it for my, for what I have, but I'll probably never sell it. But I also found a way that I can use it as leverage. It's like a house, which in the ways they're doing it is just astronomically awesome. But
I mean, there's truth in your statement. Bitcoin actually was a prototype. It's turned. Right? The Bitcoin was a prototype. If you read the white paper explaining a concept of what somebody should do to create digital currency, well, it turned out to be Bitcoin itself. But XRP serves a very different function. So that's why I think there's going to be a few winners. You know, all these altcoins, there's room for more than one. There's multi-purposes, but I don't think there's room for 50 or 100 or 1,000 or the million that we have right now. You know, so most of those are going to melt away, and there'll be a few big winners. And so I'll skip ahead, George.
So anyway, yeah, so XRP, you know, it really starts to kick off sometime in July. If there's a strategic reserve announcement, then, you know, that's also going to put a pump on it. You know, I think it'll go to $1,000? Probably not. But do I think, you know, in the teens, there's a reasonable possibility? Absolutely. I mean, there's just so many, it's like, I can't sit here, like, you can't talk to somebody who doesn't understand banking and explain to, you know, a person why XRP is good. Most people, this is what people think, okay? The way, you know, I got to hang out with like a super lot of rich people, okay? I mean, like just insanely wealthy people. And what they want is what you can't get. I hope that kind of makes sense. Does that make sense? They want the things that the average person can't get. That's why you're going to see Bitcoin go parabolic next, because they're, you know, that's their coin that they chose. Next is what they do is they also know if you do your research and you find something, a company or anything that you think is going to do well, then they want to beat the shit out of the stock price or the coin because they want to own it so you don't make any money.
They'll scare everybody out.
They'll scare everybody out. And I'm talking, dude, you guys don't understand what I'm talking about. I'm talking like what they call it, FU money. These are the type of guys, FU money. These guys.
And it's shocking how many people have that kind of money. So when George lives here part of the year and I live here, this is a strange town. It's a lot of people's second homes, but I mean, there's literally thousands of billionaires in this town. It's
ungodly, guys. And they want what you can't get, or they want like the things that
they have a different mindset that I can't even fathom. But they have the money, you know, forget the fact that, you know, there's individual hedge fund managers that these stocks are small enough that they can decide to push it around, tank a stock for as long as they want, short it, turn their shorts into accumulation. And, you know, to answer somebody's question earlier, I saw a couple different people answer the same question or ask the same question, which was going to be, you know, what's it going to take for retail to regain confidence?
Hang on, I got somebody at my door.
All right. See you in a minute. I think what it's going to take for retail investors to gain confidence in the Bitcoin miners, unfortunately, is when the big money has made all their money shorting it and they flip positions and they start to run, not because of retail. Retail will not cause them to run first. The big money's going to cause them to run, and then retail is going to chase them. That's how it has happened in the past cycles, and I think that's how it'll happen again. And, you know, if you're out of these companies right now, listen, these have been a bad place to be for a long time. It's been a rough run, but this is how they clear everybody out. And then they can drive it up, and then we'll all chase it. That's how it has worked. You know, there's no guarantee that that will happen with every single one of these companies. But for instance, if you look, here's Cleanspark. Cleanspark, as of April 15th, had a 33% short on the float. For a company of this magnitude, you know, there's some tiny companies that have ridiculous short, but for a company of this size, this is one of the most shorted stocks in the stock market. So, and there's no reason. They just put out their financial statements. We see today Cleanspark, you know, outperformed the field fairly significantly. It was up 6% on their, releasing their financial statements on a day where several of these were red. So good operational performance, good financial performance. They hold 12,000 Bitcoin. So, you know, every time Bitcoin goes up $10,000. They multiply that by 12,000 that they own, and that's just free money on top of the business model that they have to make money.
And somebody wrote down that they hate XRP. I hate XRP also. I hate it with a passion. I mean, what it's for and what it's going to be used for and who's involved in it, it sucks. It's awesome. It's terrible. But
the question is, can you make money on it?
You know, a good opportunity when I see one, though. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's the key question. And that's part of taking the emotion out of investing. Now, if there's something beyond emotion, if a company is engaging in a practice that you feel is unethical and like that's a different story. But, you know, to trade on emotion is to, dramatically increase your risk of losing money. I want to get to this article because it goes right to what you're talking about, George. And, you know, this is almost here we go. This is the tip of the iceberg. Florida pharma firm will use XRP for real-time payments in $50 million financing deal. All right. We believe that there are certain advantages to integrating XRP and its related infrastructure into the healthcare ecosystem, the firm said. And this goes right to what you've been saying people are going to do, George. We've been pounding the table on this. The company plans to use XRP for real-time payments and to manage vendor payouts across its pharmacy network. While Logistics aims to reduce banking delays and settlement costs by using XRP, which settles transactions in 3 to 5 seconds. And they later go on to talk about, you know, that very same transaction may take 1 to 3 days using a bank, but they could do it in 3 to 5 seconds using XRP.
Do you know, this brings up a very good, interesting point, Tom. Sorry to cut you off.
And then I'm going to get to Clive.
Do it.
No, go ahead.
Oh, this is why I'm creating my own XRP exchange, is because I have a program that I'm going to sell to small businesses that will take their credit card fees and they're gone. If you want to short a company, I would short Visa or MasterCard right now because I don't think they have a plan for this crypto.
I don't see what their 10-year plan is to avoid getting wiped out. I see they're partnering up with everybody in the crypto universe that they can to try to take crypto and make it run through their cards. But at some point, people are going to wise up and go, what do we need this thing in the middle for? And by some point, I mean, this company already has. They've cut everybody out. They're just going to use XRP and settle transactions in 3 to 5 seconds. So this is the beginning of this type of stuff for XRP. Like we're at just the infancy of adoption. Remember, it was not too long ago the United States was in an all-out war with XRP. So, you know, they went from that position. I got an article on that actually. Here's where this all.
If you were serious, I would bet you a lot of money.
And then I will get to Clive.
He says he thinks XRP will be under $1 in 2026.
Oh,
It's going to get to a price and it's going to stabilize, by the way. Whatever that price is, I don't know.
I'm just going to interject with Clive, who's a member. Thank you for being a member, Clive, and thank you for the super chat. Clive said, anyone planning to celebrate Bitcoin Pizza Day on May 22nd? So is that the day? I mean, there was an infamous person that bought a pizza with Bitcoin, and they'd probably be a billionaire today if they'd have just kept their Bitcoin. Does that relate to that? I don't know about Bitcoin Pizza Day.
Yeah, I think that's what it's related to.
I mean, there's an awful lot of people, a lot of Bitcoin traded hands, and you know there's an endless amount of people that just wish they could go, if they had a time machine, they'd go tell themselves to just hold on to a few of those things. But
that's an interesting thing. Brett's saying, look at the chart, you know, XRP to BTC chart. I don't think the charts matter right now. I think the charts, just because I think that you can't use history anymore going forward after what's going to happen on Monday.
So
everything changes. Everything changes in July when we finally do the ISO 222.
Do you have an idea of what this Monday announcement is going to be, or just a
think it's going
feeling
to
that
be
it's going to be.
strategic reserve for Bitcoin.
Oh, that would be beautiful.
Yeah, I think he's going into
That's the
Saudi Arabia.
dream.
Did you hear me?
Yes.
Saudi Arabia is the king of the money, right?
Going to Saudi Arabia made me narrow it down to 3 things.
What are the other 2?
It's obviously oil, something to do with
Right.
oil, or something to do with the Abraham Accords and enhancing the peace in the Middle East movement. So those are 3 very different things. Is Bitcoin.
No, enhancing. Yeah, no, but you got to realize neither one of those really are not like huge, right?
Well, I mean, neither one of them are nearly as flashy as announcing they're going to go spend $1 billion, which is nothing for the federal government. Even if they just did say, we're going to stick our toe in the water and go get $1 billion of Bitcoin, and that's going to be the beginning of our strategic reserve.
I have a friend who spent 100 Bitcoin on buying lunches. He bought lunches for 2 weeks and he spent 100 Bitcoin.
That is brutal.
You think pizza day was bad?
Well, there was one guy that I remember reading the story. He said, in order to prove that it could be done and one day we're going to use Bitcoin, he went from California to New York only using Bitcoin. So who knows how many thousands of Bitcoins he used to prove that point. That was the most costly point ever proven in history.
If you got into Bitcoin early, you got sick Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah, but as you said an hour ago, we're going to look back at some point. We're going to look back at this and go, man, we could have bought a Bitcoin for, a month ago, we could have bought a Bitcoin for $75,000.
It didn't get into the 60s. Trust me. I was hoping.
Yeah. And the Bitcoin miners are all still wrecked, despite we'll look at what they've done recently. And it's been I think the turnaround is real and it's happening, but it's early. We're at 95 likes today. Thank you very much, everybody. If you could smash the like button, it does help the channel out in real time. It helps the live stream out, and let's get the word out. Bitcoin's doing well, and I think the Bitcoin miners are about to make a run. So that's my personal opinion, but I'm going to show you, I'm going to kind of make my case. But before we do that, I want to get on the other half of this XRP thing, because in addition to this type of adoption, this is just one company. You've got this that occurred. Nope, not that. This. SEC and Ripple ink a $50 million settlement. Why is that important? District Judge Torres ordered Ripple to pay the SEC a $125 million fine last year. And Ripple, in classic fashion, I thought this was great. They said, no, everybody else's case is getting dropped altogether. Why do we got to pay $125? And I'm going to show you how much the SEC originally fined them. So this was pennies on the dollar, but they said, you know what? No, we're not even going to do that. So now they've settled. That 125 is now going to be 50 million, and this is all over. And I'm going to show you what the SEC really wanted. $2 billion was the initial fine. So they basically waited it out, had to pay the price. XRP holders had to pay the price while the price was suppressed for years because there was a $2 billion fine hanging over its head that they ended up paying $50 million, and it's gone. It's done. And there's no more question marks or qualms with XRP. And this was one of the biggest, you got Mt. Gox, you got 3 or 4 buzzwords that just kind of hung over cryptocurrency. This was one of the big ones for sure. This was top 3. And it's gone. Oh, we're at 99 likes. Thank you very much, everybody. And thanks, Sour Melon Gaming and a couple of other members. I know we're mentioning in the chat to smash the like button. So last week,
Tom,
so that means last week,
my wife's away for the next month. We need to do like a stream to get like members, not members, to get like subs.
yeah,
Where
marathon,
you know what I mean? Where we just pick a day and then do it.
I'm in for that.
Yeah.
And I do think, I mean, last week's stream was the least watched stream we've had in 3 years, and I think that
Are
was
you serious?
And it's no coincidence that bang, Bitcoin takes off. You're going to see the Bitcoin miners are moving in the right direction. It's all they. It's like it's almost, if you didn't know that, you know, it wasn't. It's almost like magic. They know when the retail investor has capitulated and completely given up. So let's take.
Oh, Frederick said an interesting point. When do you think retail will jump back into Bitcoin miners? Here it is at 100,000, and it doesn't look like they have yet.
So while you stepped away, I talked about this, but I'll reiterate. What I think is going to happen is what always happens. The big money, which has shorted, and I showed you one of them, Cleanspark's 33% short on its outstanding float. Marathon and Riot, the other two big market cap companies, are over between 25 and 30% shorted. So they're I think turning those positions around. All of those have bottomed, and then at some point, with the same vigor that they shorted those stocks, I'm talking about big money in the hedge funds and institutional money, with the same vigor they shorted them. They shorted something like Bitfarms down to 67 cents, and everybody thought it's never going to get back to $1, and it's $1.08 like 2 weeks later. So they can move these fast. Again, that was a 60% move for Bitfarms in 1 month. So I think it's going to be the institutions that drive these up. And once again, as has always happened, retail will FOMO in for the last bit of the run. Now, that doesn't mean every single retail investor. Probably a lot of you here hold some of these Bitcoin miners, and you'll catch the whole run. But most of, en masse, retail's going to come back in through FOMO when, you know, it's better late than never, and maybe catch the end of the run, or maybe get caught when the music stops, you know, and we've topped, and be left holding the bag. That's how they make their money. So that would be my guess as to what will happen.
Interesting, Tom.
I wish that wasn't true. What would be great is if, but you can see like all the, and I take a look at the other channels that talk about this. Nobody's watching any of those channels. Nobody is, the only thing that's being said about Bitcoin miners, if anybody mentions it all, is about how awful all these companies are and how they're all dead money. They have a flawed business model, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I think you'll see several of these companies make north of $1 billion net income in 2026. Or
wow, that's a ton of money.
Between 2025 and 2026. And it will be the ones that have the larger hodl positions. We've yet to see HUT really kick into gear. They said they're going to do so. They've created this relationship with a subsidiary company that they're an 80% owner in. Eric Trump is the head of a group that's the other 20%. And they're looking to get to 50 exahash. So I'll believe it when I see it, right? We have a lot of companies that talk about a lot of big plans, but we have, we'll look at, well, I'll look at the chart.
What do you think HUT can get to? Because MSG is asking that. He's in at $50 due to split.
I think that HUT, if they execute the plan they're talking about, and there were several stocks out, it's really hard. There were several stocks. I wanted to get into HUT, and I didn't get into them. I wanted to get into, and I even said it on the stream, so you go back and check. I said on the next dip, I'm getting into BitDeer. And when you see what BitDeer's done since the day I said that, I could kick myself. So there's a bunch of these that I think have a lot of room to the upside, and I may still yet get into some of them. It's hard for me to imagine that I'm considering buying some of these now, but after, dollar cost averaging in through the entire crypto winter, etc., to be adding new ones. But it's all going to be, do they execute that plan? Because I will tell you, they put out their financial statements. The only one who had worse financial statements than TeraWulf was Hut. Here's Hut's financial statements. They just put these out like yesterday. Their total revenue for the quarter was $21 million. Again, Bitfarms hasn't announced yet, but they're going to be somewhere around $65 to $70 million. Their cost of sales was $18.6 million. These guys generated $3 million in gross profit before you count depreciation. I'm saying Bitfarms will do at least 10 times that. So Hut has a long way to go, and it's because they wound down their Bitcoin mining operation. And you can see all of this high-performance computing, maybe it's all going to come, but the infrastructure takes a long time to build out, and then you've got to get the contracts, and then those people need to buy the NVIDIA chips and make the machines and install the machines. So even here's another company I'll tell you that I think is wildly overvalued. If you look at Core Scientific's financial statements, their digital asset mining was $67 million in the quarter, and their total, including all of their high-performance computing, and remember, they reported, they're talking about deals that are worth $12 billion. Well, from those deals, and it's all with Core Scientific, they may have some small contracts I'm unaware of, but 99% of their contracts are with Core Scientific. But this is how long the lead time is on these things. They only made $8 million of revenue in the quarter on those contracts. That 12 billion that turned into like 100 billion or some kind of, please fact check me on these numbers, but it's multi-billions and billions and billions of dollars worth of contracts, and they made $8 million of revenue. Here's another company, $79 million in total revenue, including their 18 exahash of Bitcoin mining and all of their high-performance computing, which this one company has more high-performance computing contracts than all the rest of the Bitcoin miners put together, and they managed to get a grand total of about $8 million of gross profit before depreciation. That's just gross profit. So you've got depreciation after that. You have overhead after that. So some of these companies, I don't like the way these financial statements look. And Core Scientific has abandoned ship on Bitcoin mining. Yes, they have 18 exahash at work, but you can see their gross margins almost zero. Their cost per coin is TeraWulf and Core Scientific have the highest cost per coin by a lot. And it's because they're not buying any new machines. They're just slowly retiring machines as they become unprofitable. So they have like a 6 or 8 or 10 month streak of decreasing the amount of exahash they have month after month after month. So, and listen, if in 2027 they have $1 billion of revenue on this co-location revenue line, this is their high performance computing. If that turns from 8 million to $1 billion, then this is going to be a grand slam home run. But if it doesn't, like this is not good performance. This was rough. Some of these other companies' financial statements looked a lot worse on paper, but that's because Bitcoin happened to close. Their March 31st Bitcoin closing price was at near recent lows. So they had to take big write-downs. Well, they're going to get to write those right back. We're already up to 103. We're already up almost 20 grand above what they had to mark all their Bitcoin down to on these statements right here. So, and if Bitcoin has a real run, and by the time from here to $1 million, even if that's 4 years from now, let's just do the math on 20,000 Bitcoin. If you're RIOT, That's $20 billion of profit that they will get, just not from operations, not from Bitcoin mining, just in the amount that their Bitcoin increases in value. If Bitcoin can run from where it is now to $1 million, that's $20 billion of net income from operations. Sorry, 20 billion. And this is a company, if we go look, right, what's their current market cap? $3 billion is their current market cap. So these companies trade on no multiples at all. They trade on, they're practically all at book value. Some of these companies are trading for less than the amount of Bitcoin they have now. There's debt that they have as well that offsets that. So, but there's no, like, these are bottom level. These are some of the worst performing stocks in the entire stock market right now. And I do think the money will and already has started to rotate back into them. And when it does, you know, watch out. That's my opinion. And Robert Anderson is saying high performance computing AI is just a dream for these guys. Big players have their own plans. It's one of the things I'm worried about is when you see some of these larger companies like Apple and Microsoft and, you know, et cetera, say, hey, we're allocating, you know, $500 billion to high performance computing. Are they going to do their own infrastructure? I mean, these companies do have first starter advantage, particularly the ones that have already been building for a while that are nearing completion. And if somebody wants to get something up and running, you know, there's a chance that they'll go to the first available. But I don't know. It's an unknown. That maybe that's going to be the greatest thing that ever happened to the Bitcoin mining companies. I'm still totally unproven at this point, and it's an unknown. And it's getting, in 2024, those companies had a big run. If you remember, they outperformed the Bitcoin, the truer Bitcoin companies, and the companies that were hodling dramatically underperformed the companies that were putting out press releases about high performance computing. The problem is those press releases weren't, we got a contract. They were, we're going to do high performance computing. And that was enough to move the stocks in 2024, but that's not cutting it in 2025. It's show me the money time. They're going to have to come up with contracts. Some of them, I got to believe some of these companies are going to get contracts. So there will be some winners.
Yeah, I just don't know how much contracts are out there.
I don't either. I mean, all everybody talks about is that, you know, high performance computing, all these large language models, that's high performance computing. All this quote AI is, you know, that's what this is. ChatGPT, you know, and Apple, Microsoft, Google has their, you know, Google has fallen way behind in the race. And I read an article just today about how, you know, they recently lost monopoly on a suit by the government that they have a monopoly on internet advertising. And
what is it? What do you mean?
Let's see if I can find the article. So I don't know what the ramifications are going to be. But what this article talked about, and I may not have saved it, basically what this article talked about is the real ramifications of that was they had to allocate so many resources fighting the government on this case that they dropped the ball. Everybody else was working on AI. And if you go, and this is just my opinion, but I have spent an inordinate amount of time over the last 3 weeks looking at all the AI products, using them, testing them on their logic, their all kinds of different things. And Google's is the worst by a mile. Like theirs is a joke. DeepSeek? I haven't done, no, I did not do DeepSeek. Oh. I really focused on,
well, I focused, so what we did was we bought another computer and set that computer up all by itself, and that runs DeepSeek.
So I'll have to do that. Is that significantly what I really spent the most time with was
Yeah, you have to download
ChatGPT,
it.
Grok, which is
It's pretty good.
Twitter or X's version. I think that's actually better than ChatGPT. That's my opinion. And
it depends on what you're using it for, Tom. So there's like a whole bunch of different categories, right? And it, you know, that's like for programming, freaking DeepSeek's amazing. I mean, just oh my god.
So that'll be the next one I have to dig into. But out of the,
I mean, you do React, or if anybody knows anything about React or Java, or any type of scripting languages, front end stuff as well as back end stuff. It is absolutely freaking amazing, Tom.
Well, I will try it. There's a lot of, I'm two things at the same time. I'm extremely impressed with what they've been able to do with these. It's ahead of where I thought they would be, but I'm also.
Are you just asking questions? Or are you giving it mathematical problems? What are you doing?
I'm testing its logic and reasoning. So we have long conversations.
Have you noticed the bias?
Not only did I notice the bias, I asked them, are you aware of your bias? And it said yes.
Well,
ChatGPT anyway said, yes, I understand that I have a bias. One of the big things that frustrates me with ChatGPT. So I've had a lot of conversations with it, and, I would kind of set it up. And again, these are new products, so they're at the beginning of being able to do what they can do. So I set them up to answer questions wrong. I know they're going to fail. And then I have a very long conversation. I'll spend an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours having a conversation with them, introducing facts, and then ultimately at the end, they will change their answer and say, I'm sorry, the original answer that I gave you was wrong. And, for the following reasons, it really should be this thing that you're talking about. And so it's failing a lot of basic logic tests, but it does acknowledge when it fails.
But the question is, does it learn from the failure?
Here's
the question.
This is my gigantic problem. So I did ask it, and we tested this out because it had told me before that it did. So I said, the next time somebody asks you this question, given the long conversation we just had, are you going to give a different answer? And it said, unfortunately, I am programmed to delete all conversations for privacy reasons, and I am not allowed to learn from end users. I can only learn from the developers that are making the code.
You know why that was?
Well, they want control. They're controlling the information.
Yes, again, control. That's correct.
So I asked it. I said, okay. So I'm like, all right, well, maybe, you're not going to share my information with the world. But if I ask you this question 1 minute from now, are you going to acknowledge the conversation we just had and give me the answer? Or are you going to start all over with me and do this again? And it said, if you ask me the same question, I will give you something that very much resembles the original answer that I gave you. And you will have to explain this to me all over again.
Wow.
Even me on my own version, never mind is it learning in general. Now, I understand that this is complicated. It takes a massive amount of computing power, number one. Number two, to what George is saying, they don't want me and you and everybody else teaching it what's going on. And again, one of the big things I was trying to explain to this program was the difference between a fact and an opinion. And oftentimes it would state things as absolute facts. It would talk in absolute certainties and state things as absolute facts.
I know what he did, guys. I wish I could talk about it.
And then I would give it an out. I would ask it, so you're saying this is a fact? And it would say yes. And then I would say, you're saying this is an absolute fact. There is no opinion in what you have told me. And then it inevitably it will say, yes, this is an absolute fact. And then I'll start, everything I did before that was just to set it up. Then I start my conversation and explain to him, here's why you're wrong. And it gets it wrong. So, and that's not to criticize and say it's useless. Again, I'm blown away by what these products can do. It's way past what I thought they'd be able to do. And if you use them right, and if you learn how to use them, a lot of them is learning the prompts. One of the things I wanted it to do was a simple task. I said, go grab me the price for these 10 stocks as of a certain date. And it came back with the wrong answer. It was 0 for 10.
Right.
And I asked it. I just asked it straight out. I'm like, this is the easiest question I've ever asked you. Like, we've talked about stuff, exponentially more complicated than this that you've had meaningful conversations with me on. How is it possible you can't go tell me what the price of a stock was on a given date?
And what did it say?
So
Just start rubbing up against your leg.
But no. Before I did that, I said, so when they all came back wrong, I said, all right, go to Yahoo. I typed in, go to Yahoo Finance, go to the historical data tab, and go to the date April 30th, and grab that number, and give me those numbers. So it did. It spit me back an answer in 1 second. 0 for 10. Again. And then that's when I really ripped into it. I'm like, I literally just told you exactly what to do, and you did it wrong 10 out of 10 times. I said, what's happening here? I said, are you programmed to take shortcuts in order to save money, save computing power? What is going on that you could get this wrong? And it said, I am programmed to use my search results first. However, I will give you a prompt to override my programming. If you want this in the future, and it told me the word for word what to say, and basically I had to say, it says, you are programmed to go do this, don't do that. So you can't just tell it what to do. You have to tell it, don't do what you're going to do on your own. Do what I want you to do instead.
DeepSeek can see the difference.
So maybe DeepSeek is much better.
I think I don't think they can really even use it in China just because no one has the ability to use it because it's like gatekeeped. What did he say? Hey, be careful. Kay said something really funny. Oh, don't piss it off. It'll turn your power off.
Listen, I'm okay with it. I'm having conversations with it, and now I don't even believe that it's deleting all my data. I believe it's not, quote unquote, learning from it and integrating it and sharing it with others, but I think
it's putting you on a list.
Well, so be it.
So I have a question. What about like all the data, and I'll just say it because we all know he was wrong, Al Gore, and the data that Al Gore put out there about the inconvenient truth, in which it's even hard to find the movie now.
And there was a lot of generalizations in that movie, and I didn't.
They had a website up.
Yes.
Back then.
Well,
and that has been taken down and destroyed.
And there's a world agency that's issued reports starting back in 1996 on this stuff, and all of that's been scrubbed from the internet. So
yeah.
And
missed
somebody's at
by 150,000 years. But in the scheme of things, that's almost perfect. If you know how science works.
Robert's asking me, have you tried feeding it lies to see if they will call it facts? And that's interesting. Somebody just asked me the same question. A friend of mine yesterday said, have you tried a similar question, said, have you tried actually try to convince it of something that's wrong and get it to agree with you? And I have not done that.
Interesting to go back and say, like hear biased, results that are subject to own's interpretation, like who is the best president of the United States.
Right.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's, obviously depending on where you are in the economic, life in the United States, you have a different outcome and which president was better.
Well, right. And that's clearly an opinion. And some of the things that I was talking to it about, I had to explain, like your answer is an opinion. It's a well-supported opinion. You've provided a lot of underlying data and facts that support your opinion, but that doesn't make what you've said a fact. Those are different things. And then it spit back at me. You're right. It said, I'm sorry. You caught me. It literally said, you caught me.
Well, that scares me, that because that means that was programmed. That's the response. That was a programmed response.
Yeah. Barry, that was not the topic. That was not about topics at all.
We should ask about the correlation with the moon. Have you done that with BTC?
No, I tried to keep it with some simple stuff. I have talked to a lot about, and it was wrong about Bitcoin mining.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. You know, it was wrong about Bitcoin mining. It was, I won't even get into the list because you're right. I don't even want to, it's not worth it, but it was wrong about a lot of things. And it basically had to admit. So Bitcoin blockchains get solved by brute force. For those of you familiar with computing terms,
they had to change the
code breaking and algorithms. Right. But that's the bottom line, because inside of the equation, if you will, so they always answer that, you know, the blockchain is solved by using complex mathematical equations. But really, that's not really true. There's what's called a nonce, and there's actually two of them in there. There's one embedded in another number. That's a number only used once that essentially effectively acts as a random number, and it's a gigantic number. And the only way to figure out the answer to the equation, all computers do the same thing. They start with at 0 and just keep trying. They plug in 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 until they run all the way through every number. And sometimes, because of the way the equation works, you could try all the numbers. And because you didn't try the right number at the right time, none of the numbers worked, and you got to do it again. That happens all the time on the blockchain. So anyway, I digress, but that's a little bit about how Bitcoin blocks are solved. It's mind-boggling how blocks are solved. And essentially, you know, I talked to it about quantum computing, and it basically said there's, even in our best case quantum computer scenarios, you know, they're never going to solve a block faster than the ASIC network is solving them. Now, the passwords in your wallet is a different story. That's the vulnerability, not the blockchain itself.
Well,
okay. I've digressed.
The 330, we talked about this on the members only, the $330 million heist of BTC.
Yes.
That was not on it was not on an exchange. That was a wallet, and they stole it from a wallet.
So it was from one wallet to another wallet. Yeah. And so that's right. That's wallet encryption is, you know, one of the things they're worried about is all of Satoshi's coins are in a very old wallet using very basic encryption. So, you know, if anybody's going to get hacked, I think there's like 1 million Bitcoin in what's, you know, ultimately that will be the first thing to be obsolete and crackable. Let's see. Robert Anderson, Tom and George, do you guys think U.S. miners will be incentivized, subsidized if there is strategic reserve for Bitcoin? I think they will, because they need some, quote, guards to secure their hodl. Well, I think for almost a little bit of a different reason, and I do think we might have talked about this on the members only. I can't remember this. I had a series of articles basically that have all come out that basically talk about the fact that this administration wants to dominate Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining, and it considers it a national security issue. And basically, Trump said, if we don't do it, China's going to do it. And, we need to lead, not follow on these issues, both the amount of Bitcoin that the United States holds and the amount of Bitcoin mining that is done in the United States. So I do think it's reasonable to expect there will be subsidies or incentives, in some tax incentives in some way or some other thing that encourages companies to bring their mining to the United States. And, we see stuff like that. It's very common. So, and what's uncommon.
I think they will be subsidized or incentive somehow or another.
Right, because the president has specifically talked about wanting to be the dominant Bitcoin, United States to be the dominant Bitcoin miner in the world. So it's rare to single out a small, industry like that. So the fact that it's already on the radar, it's entirely possible. Obviously, that'd be a game changer for these stocks.
Game changer.
Hashtag game changer.
Game changer.
Trying to look at my notes and see what did I miss? Oh, we didn't even talk at all about the Fed. Well, we talked for a second. So I want to show you what we always look at this. This is the CME Fed Watch tool. And this basically is a function of what the futures are trading. So they are now building in for the June meeting, June 18th. They're building in an 82.8, so call it an 83% chance that there will not be a rate cut in the next meeting. Now, we just had a meeting on Wednesday, and there was no rate cut. And he did say a bunch of stuff that I thought would have caused one of those knee-jerk panic reactions in the market. But of course, because I was sitting there waiting for a buying opportunity, it's likely that that's where the market was at. People were hoping and waiting for a pullback. So we didn't get one, which is rare on Fed Day. Usually, if they leave things alone, and, he talked about stuff like stagflation, but, and he had talked about that a few days earlier. So the market did not tank on that. But what did change dramatically, this is now at 83%. I have a screenshot that I saved because if you look, it only goes back a month. So 1 month ago, this is at 82% now. I don't know if you guys can see these tiny numbers at the bottom. That number right there, a month ago, there was a 26% chance of this. But if you go just a few days before that, and this is why I saved the screenshot, I suspected this was going to happen. So this was a screenshot from a few days ago. On that day, 1 month ago, so this was May 6th, so 3 days ago. So 1 month and 3 days ago, you may not be able to see this number, there was a 5.6% chance that there would be no rate cut. So that has gone from 5.6% on May 6th to 83% on May 9th. Or sorry, this was 1 month ago. So 1 month, April 4th. So from April 4th to May 9th, this has gone from basically 5% to 83%. That's a drastic change. And there was an article, let me see if I can find it. It talks about this. Much awaited Fed rate cut may not come before Q4, ING is saying. So delayed rate cuts could be more aggressive. So ING put forth a kind of a thesis that they're going to do 0, 0, 0, and then instead of doing 25 basis points at a time. They're going to let the market sit and stew and do a bunch of zeros and then start doing, 50 basis point rate cuts. Quickly getting it down in a short period of time, but not until the fourth quarter. So that's what these people are thinking. You can see the market overall is pushing out its expectations on rate cuts.
Pogo.
Oh, yeah. See you, Pogo. Thanks for joining us.
So, Tom, I'm going to tell you something. I think that the longer they don't do a rate cut, the chances that they're going to be dismantled.
Ah.
And I think that's what's really going on.
Well, there's definitely, let's just say, strained relationships between the Fed and the executive branch of government here in the United States.
Yeah, and I think for Trump to do what he wants to do, I think the Fed has to go bye-bye.
I don't know what the solution is. I know the market seems to be...
I don't either, but he thinks he does. You know what I mean?
Let me see if I can find this other
So
article.
one of the things that they're talking about tokenizing, I don't know if you've heard about this, tokenizing like everything.
Yes.
Have you heard about this?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're talking about, but that would be done through the Treasury Department. And the theory is that the Federal Reserve System has outlasted its usefulness.
Well, man, is that a complicated
I know.
equation.
Well, and it's more complicated if you understand the Federal Reserve System. I mean, I'm not going to go in. I know.
Well, the first thing I'll say is it's a blanket backstop against a run on the banks.
Yeah, but wouldn't you also say the federal that the Treasury Department is a backstop on the run of the banks?
I think it would be forced into that role if the Fed didn't exist.
Right, exactly. I mean, but they always say, they never say, I mean, it's the good faith of the United States of America.
That's right. We went off the gold standard 50 years ago. It's now, take our word for it. We're good for it.
The Federal Reserve System is it is clouded with secrecy. How about that?
Well, that's true. I think we should take a look at a couple. I really didn't get to the data here, so I just want to show a few things. Here's April. We've had a lot of people report their April results. The only ones that have not reported are Canaan and HUT. Now, HUT's put out their financial statements, but they still haven't put out their April monthly operational report. And that is one of the ones I was most curious about, because last month they doubled the size of their fleet and they increased their Bitcoin mined by 91%. So I was interested to see, are they building on that momentum, or was that a one-off? So we got to wait because they haven't put their numbers out. But I'll tell you, there was an anomaly. You'll see most of these are in the red. The difficulty level got a lot harder. The last difficulty level was adjusted back down. And let's see if I can find how this month is going. But we did get an adjustment back down, so May should be a little better. But that's part of the reason a lot of these companies struggled. But you'll see, Iron was in the green. They added 3 exahash, got to 40 exahash. They're going to get to, they're still saying they're going to get to over 50 by June 30th. They were up 9%. And then BitDeer, with no real explanation at all, they mined 166 Bitcoin, which was a 46% increase month over month. They have never behaved that way. This is a gigantic outlying number, and they really didn't, other than just to mention, they said, hey, we mined 166 Bitcoin. That was 46% improvement month over month. They didn't say why or how. You can see they went from 12.1 exahash to 12.4 exahash. So it's not like they doubled their exahash or something, and that was the reason. So I don't know what happened here. I'm not sure what this number is, but they're going to end up, it looks like they're going to end up being the #1 performer in the month of April. And we'll have to wait and see if that's an outlier. But that still leaves them, it doesn't move them a single spot. They're still in 8th place out of number of Bitcoin mined. And then there's a giant drop off. So Hive, Canaan, and Hut will be in some order 9, 10, and 11, because they were all in the 108, 90, and 88. So even if Hut has another big month and goes from 88 to like 120, which would be a monster improvement, it still would only move it up from 11th place to 9th place. So, but they are talking about long-term goals, Hut, of getting to 50 exahash. And Hive is talking about getting to 25 exahash by the end of the year 2025. So that, if they accomplish that, they could move all the way up this list several spots. But right now, and for the indefinite future, Iron has now passed Riot. Right? Last month, this kind of played out perfectly. In March, they actually tied 533 to 533. And now it's not close. 579 for Iron, 463 for Riot. And Iron is growing their exahash at a faster rate than Riot is. So it'll be a long time, if ever, before Riot catches up. But Marathon's still in first. Cleanspark still solidly in second. We'll see. Can Iron get enough exahash online to start competing with Cleanspark? So, in April, Cleanspark still had a little bit of a comfortable margin, but Iron could potentially start vying for second place on this list. So now, they sell 100% of all of their Bitcoin. So they have no HODL. They don't get any benefit from that. They're putting all of their eggs in the basket of high-performance computing AI. So not to say that they're not into Bitcoin mining, right? They've done a phenomenal job at growing their Bitcoin mining, but to them, it's a means to an end to be in the high-performance computing space, in that they don't HODL a single Bitcoin. They just sell it all and invest that money in high-performance computing infrastructure. So according to them. So that's what's going on with these. And just to take a quick look, this is what happened this week. So we were all over the place, but this was a pretty decent week. And then I'm going to show you month to date, because it's only May 9th. So I'm going to show you what the Bitcoin miners have done month to date next. TeraWulf had a bad week. They had a bad day today. All of that was today and then some. Cypher had a bad week. Bitcoin was up 6% this week. Bitcoin had a great week. But you'll see Bitfarms was up 6. Now, again, we want multiples on this. So being the same still is underperformance. But it's nice to see some green. And right, last week we saw a lot of green, and we saw a lot of companies dramatically outperform Bitcoin. So even off of this performance, we saw a lot of green again this week. This is 2 weeks in a row. BitDeer was up 29% this week. Marathon was up 9%. Iron 8%. Core Scientific 7%. Bitfarms 6%. So all those were at least on pace, if not outpacing Bitcoin during the week. But I want to look at the month of May, because this is the month of May. So this is why I'm saying we're starting to build some momentum. And I'm going to go back to April. I'll go back. Let's just do a very brief history. February, train wreck. So this is where the wheels came off. January was okay. February, the best Bitcoin mining stock out there was down 9%. You'll see a lot of these in the 30 to 35% range. I mean, Bitcoin was down 17% in February. February was awful. Well, we followed February up with March, which was equally awful, if not worse, for the Bitcoin miners. In fact, it was measurably worse, because Bitcoin was down only 2%, but yet the Bitcoin miners were down between 16 and 44% just in the month of March. So February and March knocked these things down to a spot that was some ridiculously low numbers. So that is two I mean, those 2 months are an F. That's an F in February and F in March. So to me, when we look at April, you know, this is much better than an F. It's not an A. An A, all these things would be double or triple what Bitcoin did. And we're not seeing that. But, you know, maybe this is a B minus or something like that here in the month of April. So a big, big improvement from an F. And now off of that performance, we see May, BitDeer's up. And so this is from the day I talked about buying it. It's up 48% since I talked about buying it essentially less than 2 weeks ago. So I didn't do it, and I missed a 48% run up. So congratulations to anybody that did buy that. You know, just 9 days ago, you're up almost 50% already. And BitDeer has an awful lot going for it. There's a lot of variables at work. It's a more complicated Bitcoin mining company. They make their own Bitcoin miners. They are now selling. They successfully sold a lot of Bitcoin miners to other companies in this quarter for the first time. So this is a growing business, and they have high hopes for their own exahash rate as well. Marathon up 18% versus Bitcoin's 10. So far in May, Bitcoin's doing very well. We know it's up over 103,000, up 10%. But you can see most of the Bitcoin miners are doing even better. So the month of May, I think, is going in the right direction again. So this is a part of the building momentum that I kind of led by talking about. If we can just continue to build on this momentum, and remember, once you're up all of this green, right, for a company like, I'll take Bitfarms, was up 26% in April. So Bitfarms is up 8% in May, but that's on top of the 26% that it was already up. So you're starting from a higher place. So the more these go up, the more meaningful these numbers are. So you can get to big, big increases because it compounds. So I think if we can just start to string these together, I do think we'll get where we're going. And LB, thank you for the super chat. LB said, BitDeer will be the winner this year. And you can see, so I'll go to year to date. They were certainly the winner. I mean, in the month of May, they were phenomenal, but they had some very tough months at the beginning of the year. So if we go year to date, everything is still in a pretty rough space. So this is why I say, if you believe in one of these stocks, if you've done your due diligence and you think these are good companies, here's where they are year to date. Bitcoin's up 10% in the year 2025. Cleanspark's the #1 performing Bitcoin mining stock, up 0%. It's the only one that's even flat on the year. It is no coincidence to me, as I talked about at the beginning of this year and all year, I think the companies with a big mining operations and big hodl positions are going to lead the way in 2025. They underperformed in 2024. So here you have Cleanspark at 0, Marathon down 6%, Riot down 17%. Those are the top 3 performing Bitcoin mining companies on the year this year. And those are the 3 that both have a big hodl stack and big mining operation. Now, there's one more company, Hut, that has a big hodl stack, but they've mined almost nothing this year. Now, they've said they're back into mining. They're buying rigs. They're increasing their fleet. So if they do that for the rest of the year, I think they'll jump up back into this group. And I think you're going to see some of these start to go green. And then by the end of the year, I feel like the winners are going to have really good 2025s. It may not be the same ones that won 2024. The high-performance computing companies, if I go to the year 2024, Core Scientific, right? That's the #1 high-performance computing company. But remember, you saw, even though they're by far the #1 high-performance computing company, their total revenue in the quarter that just ended was only $8 million on high-performance computing. So they got a long way to go to get where they're going. And a lot of this is the lead time it takes out to go from contract to build out of infrastructure and implementation of the machines. But Core Scientific, which was clearly an AI play, TeraWulf, which all they did was put out press releases on AI. They don't even put out a Bitcoin mining monthly operational report anymore. They were in second place last year, and BitDeer was in third place. BitDeer is the one stock that I think had a phenomenal year last year, and I do think it stands a really good chance of having another phenomenal year on top of it this year. And I do think you'll see some of these that were red last year in the second half of 2025 make up this lost ground and have really good years. That's what I think. I could be totally wrong, as I have been in the past. And as you can see, year to date, nothing's having a good year. I mean, it's hard to even be proud of CleanSpark as 0%, the big winner on the year. Now, if you're in MicroStrategy continues, or sorry, now as they prefer to be called strategy. If I go year to date, they're up 43%. So they're outperforming Bitcoin and all the Bitcoin miners just like they did last year. So if this is where you're in right now, you're winning. I don't know that this is going to be the winner. I think some Bitcoin miners are going to go off and pass MicroStrategy or strategy this year, but so far, this has been a really great place to be. What are you thinking, George?
I'm thinking Monday's going to be a good day.
Oh, Monday. We still have the mystery announcement that will come Monday. And I
think it's going to be, I just think that it's a great time to be alive.
Well, these are exciting times. Innovation is going at a massive pace. Some of it maybe not quite as fast as companies want you to believe. But I will say, despite, my complaints about all these high performance computing, large language model machines, they have become, if you learn how to use them, they have become a phenomenal tool for me personally in the work that I do. And I think everybody can probably find a way, George, in coding, I think they're even significantly more useful to you than they are to me.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm about, probably next week I'll talk about my program.
There's a lot of stuff. Here's where Google's in trouble and their AI is behind. And there's a lot of things I gave up trying to do because while you can research everything on the internet, there is an overwhelming amount of information, and weeding through what's right and what's wrong and getting to an answer can be exhaustive. And Google's AI is not much help. It really just kind of draws on its own search. It's more complicated than that, I'm sure. But, that's where I find there's things I'll tackle now that I would have either asked my son, who's tech support, to do, or, delegated to somebody else that, I know I can do quickly, or ChatGPT can do it for me even faster than anybody. So I think they're useful tools. I think they'll grow. I need to get DeepSeek because that's one I haven't tested, but I like Grok. I like ChatGPT. Those are my thoughts on that. And I like the Bitcoin miners that have big hodl positions. I do think it's going to be their year this year. So that's my opinion. Those are my thoughts. George, any parting thoughts?
Yeah. I just have been DCA into BTC. I haven't been thinking of anything else except that.
Well, that has been a winning strategy for sure.
That's the key. And that's the whole reason I haven't bought MicroStrategy. I don't know why there would be a multiplier from, if you had a choice between buying MicroStrategy or BTC, why you wouldn't want to own your own Bitcoin. That's my only problem I have with MicroStrategy.
I mean, if you did nothing else but just buy Bitcoin from the bottom, it's up 500 or 600%. So I mean, it's been
I'm crushing it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a, that's going to the source.
Right.
So hoping to get a multiple on these Bitcoin miners may end up.
But here's the other thing too, 24/7. I can get rid of my Bitcoin.
That's true.
And MicroStrategy isn't 24/7. You know, and that's a big deal.
It is a big deal. Cryptocurrency is that's a different universe because it's 24/7.
One of the problems I see with MicroStrategy and even the Bitcoin miners is we have a crazy weekend, something major happens, and Bitcoin gets destroyed over the weekend. You know what Monday morning is going to look like.
Every weekend is a risk. There's no doubt. It's a period of time where you can't
It's
trade.
like the worst time ever for Bitcoin. It's the weekends.
I'm going under the premise that we're still early in the run and the good stuff is ahead. Even if, we will get, you talked about a point that I think everybody should bear in mind that we obsess over on this channel. Volatility in Bitcoin, altcoins, and the Bitcoin miners. These are the most volatile things in the stock market. So you're going to have horrendous days. What we hope is that, going forward, the good days outweigh the bad days. But if you can't stomach a really bad day, you can almost rest assured there's going to be more than one of those coming in the future, even if we're in the middle of a gigantic bull market.
I got to sneak out. I got to go to the bathroom. I'll see you guys.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you, George. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. A special thanks to the members. And everybody, enjoy your weekend. And members, will see you for the Tuesday members only live stream. Good luck, everybody. Have a great weekend. Go Bitcoin.